Currently, Krampus is in the room. He insisted on being here. I hope that's okay, and he won't cause any problems. Krampus is very crampy right now, so we'll see if he'll sit. Yeah? I think this is much better than whatever nonsense we're about to read. No, got some kitty times. Kitty times. Look at this guy. Look how big. He's so big. He's big. Yes, he is. All right. Let's see what we got. Greetings, cult members, loyal subscribers, and casual viewers alike. We're going to start on Section 2, Early Classroom Materials, 1975 to 1978. I will warn you that Krampus is right here. He seems to have calmed down, but we'll see what happens. Some of the words here are in bold, so I guess I will bold my voice for you guys. With the distribution of Statement 1 in March of 1975, the first document featured in this section, the public phase of T and Doe's mission was begun. From a hotel room in, I think this is going to be pronounced Ojai, Ojai, California, where T and Doe stayed for less than a week, the statement was sent out to ministers, evangelists, and awareness centers far and wide. Within 2 or 3 days, a man who headed an awareness group in Los Angeles came out to Ojai with one of his students to meet with the two. After deciding T and Doe were seemingly sane, well, how did he decide that, first of all? Who was he to decide that, second of all? How long did it take to decide that, third of all? The reason that this is so interesting that they have to add that they were seemingly sane, aside from the fact that anybody reading this might think this person is crazy or the stuff they say sounds crazy. The fact was that Marshall Applewhite, who we know as Doe, he actually had himself institutionalized. He was having a lot of gay thoughts, but in addition to that, he was also experiencing hallucinations and delusions. Unfortunately, instead of receiving treatment, he met a nurse at the facility that just fed into his delusions. She herself was looking for somebody who was interested in things like astrology, prophecy, divinity, and that kind of new age approach to pull in Christianity. And it just seems that, from all accounts, they kind of fed into each other. So Doe had told her that they had met in a previous life, and T had mentioned something that they were fated to be together. So they basically both fed into each other's belief. We know that Doe was seeking treatment. We know that he had reported thoughts that were delusional. He had reported hallucinations. As far as T, I don't know why she believed this. I don't know if she was also undergoing some kind of issue she needed help with in terms of mental health, or if she just really believed this and somehow found a person that was able to feed into a belief that she had already constructed, this kind of spiritual worldview, and from there they both fed into each other. And I think that's what is really interesting for me about the cult was Doe really believed this stuff. Unlike a lot of other cults where the leader ends up choosing an escape route after being, chased down, or in cases like with the Branch Davidians where people ended up getting shot, and this was not part of their plan at all. The situation with Doe was that he really did believe this, and on that day, when all of the other members decided to exit their vehicles, he went with them. He was wearing the same clothes, he had the same amount of change in his pockets, he was presented in the same way. He really believed this, and that's one thing I think is really interesting. Doe himself was delusional, but the people that he convinced were not. There's no evidence that any of the followers had any kind of mental illness. They may have, but there's no evidence of it that I've found. These were people that joined a cult for the same reason pretty much anybody joins a cult. They're promised that there's some way to improve yourself, that you are dissatisfied with the means that are available, so we have a new way for you to reach whatever it is you're trying to reach. And the reason that you haven't been successful reaching that goal in the past is because you haven't done it our way. But once you join with us, then we will, show you the way. The reason that you feel like an outsider is because you are an outsider. And in this case, it's because you're inhabited by a soul that is from the next evolutionary level above human, and that's why you don't really match well with other humans. I don't know who wrote this portion. Sometimes it says at the end who wrote which part of the paper, but this does not. So I'm not sure who wrote this, but the idea that they were seemingly sane, in addition to, yes, we're not crazy. Yes, I know people call it a cult. In addition to that typical reason to say that our leader is sane, I think they really also added that because of Doe's mental break in the past. After deciding T and Doe were seemingly sane, he invited them to speak at a gathering of some of his students and their guests at one of their houses. Who is this guy? Okay, an awareness group. All right, this isn't like a teacher. Well, that's good. They accepted, and they were taken quite by surprise to see that the house was packed. Unbeknownst to T and Doe, this was adding up to be the not too welcome idea of followers. And so it all began. The poster, featured on page 5 of this section, was designed several months later to announce the free public meetings, some of the earliest being held by these newly proclaimed followers. Wow, it took several months to design a poster. It'll look really good, right? It won't. Sorry, spoilers. Then on August 24th, 1975, using the names Bo and Peep, the two, made their first appearance at a public meeting given at Cañada College, located in the San Francisco Bay Area of California. If our recollection is correct, the crowd was so large at the appointed time that the auditorium was filled to capacity twice. That is, for 2 back-to-back meetings. I don't know why this bothers me, this phrasing. So large at the appointed time. How about so large at the start of the meeting? This kind of reminds me of when my students are studying for the SAT and they decide to drop in a bunch of fancy words, and I'm just telling them, you don't need to do that. You just don't. Then 3 weeks later, on September 14th, 1975, T and Doe, still using the names Bo and Peep, held a meeting in Waldport, Oregon. It was at this point that the press picked up on the story, and the onslaught had begun. Their interest was largely stimulated by reports of individuals giving away both children and property to join the group. That's something. Although such actions were certainly not according to T and Doe's instructions, nevertheless, Bedlam had broken out by then. How as a journalist, how do you get that wrong? There's no requirement to give up your children. There's no requirement to give up your property. But I'm going to write down that they gave up children and property. Or is it because they're trying to say it's not according to T and Doe's instructions? So T and Doe didn't tell anybody to give up their children and property. It's just for you to really be one of our students so we can educate you to properly leave behind your vehicle to go to the kingdom of heaven or the next evolutionary level above human. To do that, you have to live with us without any outside influence. So having a property on which you pay rent, or having children who don't believe in this. That's not something that's allowed to distract you. So, it says, of course, it's not according to their instructions, but people don't just give up property and children. It also doesn't say, although such actions were not occurring. It doesn't say, although this never happened, the media turned it into a circus. They're not saying that. They're saying, basically, this did happen. People gave up their children, they gave up their property, but it's not like T and Doe told them to do it. But you don't have to tell somebody to do it. It's implied. So, I don't know. I don't care for this. We had become a national media item. Their unrelenting spotlight glared upon us for over half a year, and by and large, almost every report either written or aired about us was either riddled with inaccuracies or outright lies. That is, with one noteworthy exception. On Sunday, February 29, 1976, the New York Times published the best researched article to date. As the cover story of the New York Times Magazine, freelance writer James S. Phelan, who actually had a lengthy interview with T and Do, wrote a generally quite objective article, though certainly not the way we would have written it, despite the journalistic tide against his doing so. Is that in here? I'm gonna see if I can find it. I mean, it'd be nice if they included like a reproduction of it. I don't see 88 updates. What's this? No. Yes? No. We'll look for it. Over 130 public meetings held throughout the US, as well as in Canada, continued until the spring of 1976, when, on April 21st, T announced that the harvest is closed. In late June of 1976, the students were called together in the Medicine Bow National Forest, Wyoming, to begin a classroom in earnest. Close to 100 followers showed up. The classroom reduced to about 40 to 50 pretty quickly. Over the period of time from then until the spring of 1992, we lost a few more students, some of whom have since returned, but no new students have entered the class. Excerpts taken from 88 Update. The 17 Steps and Major Offenses are documents that were never intended for public release, that is, until now. Rather, they were in-house guidelines for appropriate next-level behavior conduct. So the 17 Steps and Major Offenses. That is in this section. I think we covered a couple of them in one of the cult meetings previously, but let's see if we can find that New York Times article. Okay, that was a lot easier to find than I had anticipated. Glad they included all the information, the author and the date and all of that. Two pleasant middle-aged Texans and an eager flock of converts prepare for a one-way trip by UFO to the next level above human. Flying saucer tales long ago ceased to be news. Just when the great UFO fever began to wane cannot be pinpointed precisely, but it was somewhere around the time when a West Coast housewife told an inquiring reporter, quote, "I don't understand all this excitement about flying saucers. Why? They come into our backyard all the time," end quote. Which underscores the extraordinary nature of a story that filtered out of Oregon last October. It made the national news wires. A full page in Newsweek on October 8th was relayed to millions of CBS News watchers by Walter Cronkite. Quote, "A score of persons from a small Oregon town have disappeared," said Mr. Cronkite. "It's a mystery whether they've taken on a so-called trip to eternity or simply been taken. Terry Drinkwater takes a look at the story," end quote. Stationed before the Oregon motel where the mystery had briefly incubated, Drinkwater intoned, quote, "Rocket ships from outer space, Buck Rogers' fantasy, or is it? Today there is a group of Earthlings who believe they're on their way to a rendezvous with such a ship for a trip to the unknown. Here along the cloud-covered coast near Newport, Oregon, a mysterious couple appeared 3 weeks ago, circulating a flyer proclaiming a UFO would soon be ready to take whoever would follow them to another life, another world. They held meetings, one at this motel, to recruit voyagers," end quote. Drinkwater quoted a local newsman as saying the vanished people, quote, "gave away everything, including kids, all of their material belongings, property, automobiles, boats, and money, and just left," end quote. He concluded, quote, 20 or more faithful are now apparently headed for the lonely prairie of eastern Colorado," end quote. Neither CBS nor Newsweek identified the two recruiters for a one-way voyage off this planet, although the Newsweek noted that they referred to themselves as Bo and Peep. Thereafter, their wandering flock was reported in a fragmentary newspaper accounts throughout the West and Midwest, sometimes with Bo and Peep and sometimes untended. Then, several months ago, Bo and Peep dropped, or rose, out of sight, or at least out of the newspapers. By a process too Byzantine to relate, involving weeks of interrogating their West Coast followers and the assistance of intermediaries, this writer finally located the Space Shepherds, and they agreed to an interview in Little Rock, Arkansas, on their motives, progress, and difficulties in getting off this planet. The two, as their followers referred to them, proved to be a pair of middle-aged Texans. Bo, a soft-spoken, highly articulate man of 44, was born Marshall Herf Applewhite. Peep is a matronly woman of 48, the former Mrs. Bonnieloo Truesdale Nettles. In the interview, they referred to each other as Bo and Peep. They were wearing slacks and windbreakers, and, except for Bo's distinctive thatch of near-white hair worn in a with-it over-the-ears cut, they looked more like a pleasant suburban couple next door than creatures from a distant galaxy. They have none of the hallmarks of fanatics. They explain their bizarre project patiently with flashes of humor while sipping Coca-Colas. Bo did most of the talking, emphasizing keywords effectively, like an experienced network anchorman. While Peep said little, it was plain that their relationship was that of co-equals. Occasionally, she would correct him. Quote, that could be taken out of context, end quote, she warned several times, and Bo would rephrase his comment. She had a distinctly Texan twang. Quote, I've not wholly overcome the state of Texas, end quote, she said, which turned out to be an inside joke. They talked about their earthly mission for several hours, while a bespectacled follower tape-recorded their words with the interest of accuracy. No one has left the planet yet. There have been misunderstandings that have caused some defections, but new converts continue to flock in. Their message is now being spread largely by devout followers. The converts engage in something called the process, which entails seemingly aimless wandering in pairs and small groups, mostly, I think it's supposed to be mostly from, but it says mostly from one public campsite to another. They spend their time in 4 activities: communing with those in the next level or outer space, overcoming their human attachments, soliciting small sums of money to live on, and seeking new converts. I do like how the author wrote that it's something called the process, which entails seemingly aimless wandering in pairs and small groups. That's maybe something that when we were reading in the book, they said this is not how we would have phrased it or how we would have written it. That might be one of those things, because it does seem like a dig at them. I mean, what kind of process is this? This is less organized than Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on your door. Recently, the followers have held briefing sessions to spread the message in California, Florida, New England, Texas, Oklahoma, and Minnesota. The two do not keep in close touch with their flock. They were delighted to learn from this reporter that a recent San Francisco meeting that he attended had drawn a standing room only crowd of more than 700, and that a San Diego briefing had filled a college lecture hall to capacity. The two say they don't conduct any census of their converts, but their followers estimate the flock now numbers between 300 and 1,000. That's a big gap. maybe keep track, you know? I mean, they're really saying that I am embodying the soul of the one who was also in Jesus. And in T, or in Peep at this time, this person embodies the one that you would recognize as Yahweh. Anyway, we don't really know how many people are following us. It could be 300, it could be 1,000, whatever, you know? I don't know, I don't like that they're speaking with such authority, but then, yeah, just whatever. And not even the two say this, their followers estimate the flock. So they're just absolutely not keeping track whatsoever. I think, I don't know if that was written in a way to sort of make them look bad, but it does make them look like they're lacking some kind of authority, some kind of organization. The whole idea is to gather a bunch of students to enter a classroom wherein they teach them how to properly prepare to separate from their vehicle and enter the kingdom of heaven, or the next kingdom, or the next level above human. And they have no idea how many people there are. It seems a little bit ridiculous. There was nothing mysterious about their recent vanishing, Bo and Peep explained. They have been engaged, like Richard Nixon, Spiro Agnew, Judith Campbell Exner, and your next-door neighbor, in writing a book. It is being rushed into print on a paperback with a foreword by Hayden C. Hughes of Edmond, Oklahoma, a longtime UFO tracker who is director of the International Association for the Investigation of the Unexplained. Despite the cosmic aspects of their problems, Bo and Peep discuss them in a down-to-earth manner, much like a suburban couple explaining a controversy that had arisen in their PTA chapter. A principal issue is the date when the UFO will descend, take Bo and Peep and their flock aboard, and soar up into the heavenly kingdom or next level, as they described their destination. A number of the prospective passengers have grown restless, like a group of Caribbean-bound voyagers whose cruise ship's sailing has been delayed. Discontent is especially prevalent among the first 27 prospective space voyagers who were recruited back in April 1975 at the home of Joan Culpepper, a Los Angeles psychic. Okay, so we have the answer about where they met. We don't know who the man was that came from this awareness center and had deemed the two to be seemingly sane, but at least we know now whose home this was held in. A number of them, including Mrs. Culpepper, complained that they were told the takeoff would occur within months in the summer of 1975. Mrs. Culpepper, who is divorced, is an energetic, attractive woman, and she has become a leader of the UFO dissidents. Why do we care that she's divorced? Why do we care that she's divorced and we keep calling her Mrs.? I mean, why? It's just, are they letting us know, hey, she's available? Just in case any of you guys are interested in dating the psychic, you can. Quote, I feel a responsibility for what I helped them get into, end quote, she says. She, too, is writing a book about the two. The defectors look upon her as a kind of Ralph Nader of the UFOs. We've never stated the time, said Beau, while Peep nodded earnest agreement. He conceded, however, that he did tell the first group, quote, we know that you don't have as long as a year, end quote. I'm just going to stop saying quote. It is not that we're hiding anything, he said. Heavens, if we knew the exact month we would leave, we would say it. He now admits that the 1-year deadline was a mistake, and the liftoff day has not been scheduled, and may be several years away. But it might also be next week. I think that's another one of those digs from the reporter. The departure cannot be pinpointed, they explain, because it depends on something called the demonstration, a miracle that they will perform. As they describe it, they are to be assassinated by angry disbelievers and are then to rise from the dead. They base this prediction on the claim that they are not ordinary visitors from outer space, but heavenly messengers whose appearance was foretold in the New Testament's book of Revelation. Well, that's good to know. They're not regular aliens, they're like heaven aliens. That's good. Good distinction to make. The biblical passage tells of 2 witnesses with the power to prophesy, whose message tormented them that dwelt on the earth. The 2 are killed, according to Revelation, and their bodies lie in the street for 3.5 days. Where are they killed that they're going to just lie in the street for 3.5 days in the US at this time? Then the 2 rise from the dead, and a voice from heaven cries, come up hither. And in the sight of their foes they ascend to heaven in a cloud. Beau and Peep maintain that they are the biblical 2, and that the cloud is actually a spacecraft. This is one of those situations where I'm getting caught up on the wrong thing. You know, okay, I'm okay with them being killed. I'm okay with all of this being prophesied in Revelations. I'm okay with the come up hither. They ascend into a cloud. The cloud is a spacecraft. Fine, I'll go with you there. But the idea that their dead bodies lie in the street for 3.5 days, I don't know. That's the part where I'm saying, maybe not. We would be pleased to have the demonstration come quickly so we could go back to our Father's kingdom and go on with our work there instead of here, Beau said. While we have no desire to escape the demonstration, neither are we people who find pleasure in being killed. The world does not have to choose to do us in, but the chances that it won't happen are about as great as great as that a rain will wash all the red dirt out of Oklahoma. I wonder how Beau, or Doe in this case, I wonder how he felt preparing to exit the vehicle with all of his students. That they had vodka, they had barbiturates, they were having bags taped over their head instead of this demonstration. They also had to deal with this idea, they being the entire cult, to deal with this concept not being able to be fulfilled after T had died. How are you going to have a demonstration of the biblical 2 when one of them passed away early? And after 3.5 days, spoiler warning, she didn't come back to life. So this is how we know that this is happening. We're fulfilling prophecy and Revelation, and it's just not going to happen. And here he says that basically this is going to happen. He's emphasizing this will happen. So when T passes away, I wonder if he thought about this interview, and then as he was, getting really drowsy and all of that, and preparing the rest of the students, I wonder if he thought about this quote again, that the demonstration never got to happen. The 2 first publicly predicted the demonstration when skeptics challenged them to perform a miracle to prove that they were indeed divine messengers from outer space. They have refused to perform miracles on the grounds that any believer who requires a miracle is not worthy of a seat on the heavenly spacecraft. To qualify for the voyage, they say, one must believe in them without any of those little tricks, as they refer to miracles. The demonstration, they point out, will be staged not to convince their followers, but to confound the scoffers. In addition to possessing unquestioning faith, followers of the two must undergo what is termed the process. Oh, is this the wandering around? This consists of overcoming normal human attachments to families, homes, money, tobacco, alcoholic beverages, children, sex, and any kind of drugs, including marijuana. So, this is that part where I nailed it, right? Although such actions were certainly not according to T and Do's instructions, in reference to people saying that, yeah, they want you to give up their children and their property, that's exactly what it's saying. So they didn't tell them expressly, you must give up children and you must give up property. They just said, well, for all of us, we have to give up all human attachments. If that happens to be children, so be it. If that happens to be property, so be it. So, all right, well, Ms. Lemon is a prophet, proven yet again. This renunciation is necessary to help the follower concentrate on establishing direct communication with those in the next level. Once such contact is made, the follower carries out whatever instructions are received from above. Bo and Peep consider themselves messengers to show mankind how to get off the top of the mountain, not as tour guides to outer space. In a series of how to do it memos, they have spelled out the process in considerable detail. To demonstrate that you are committed to reaching the next level, where you will have eternal life and be able to help significantly those in this garden, one memo asserts, you must leave all your past behind. This means that you walk out the door of your human life, taking with you only those things that will be necessary while you are still on this planet. If you are ready to go, you will need a car, a tent, a warm sleeping bag, a stove, at least 2 changes of winter clothing, and 2 for warmer weather, eating and cooking utensils, and whatever money you can bring. Didn't they just say they have to get rid of money? Or just human attachments to money, I guess. We can just have the money. We just use it for what we need, but we're not attached to the money. I mean, I think I get it. The walking out the door formula, another memo explains, should not be confused with a seeming similar experience that so many have tried, the search for self. Such a candidate does not seek to increase his human qualities, such as loving and sharing in the human way, for in his pursuit of the kingdom of heaven, his only interest in another human is that of recruiting prospects. That definitely sounds Christian, right? I'm only interested if I can convert you, otherwise, have fun in hell. The two now claim that this passage is partly an error. We don't feel that the members of the next level are recruiting, Bo said, nor do we feel that it is our desire to recruit. We merely come to the places where people are looking for information that we would like to share. We are not interested in talking them into anything. Recently, Joan Culpepper, remember she's available, divorced, Mrs. but divorced, available, who says she contributed $433 to the process, consulted the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office about lodging a fraud complaint. Okay. Can you imagine can you imagine being at that district attorney's office and somebody's lodging a fraud complaint and you ask, okay, well can you tell me how much you have lost? And $433. Okay. And can you explain the situation where this fraud had occurred? Yes. I allowed strangers who claimed to be space aliens coming to take us all away in a spaceship to come into my house to host all of my fellow New Age people from the Awareness Center. And they spoke to us, and I was convinced that within a few months, I would be gone on a spaceship. Why I gave them $433 to go on the spaceship, I can't really explain. But anyway, I gave them that money, and as you see, I'm still here. I'm not on a spaceship, so I would like to file a fraud complaint. How will the person, this administrator who's receiving this complaint, how will they sit there with a straight face? Wow. I wonder if we're going to get any little snide comments from the journalist. She and some other not just she, and some other defectors feel they have paid for a UFO trip. What do you mean paid for the trip? Why would a UFO need money? Now, I know you might be asking, well, why would God need money, right? Why do you tithe? And I never really liked that as a Christian and even as an atheist, that idea that God needs your money. God does not receive the money. Nobody claims that we're taking the money and then handing it off to this intangible, omniscient being. The money is received to do things like pay people's salaries that work at the church, to pay rent on the property, to pay for the electricity bill, the heating bill, and so on. If more money is collected, that can also be given to missionaries to pay for things like food. Fantastic. What was the explanation here? $433 to go. It's to pay for gas for the UFO. Is that what this was? How? What's the money for? Not that we paid $433 for tea and dough to have lodging or to eat. And I trusted them, and they misused my trust to just get some free food and free housing for a short time, and I feel defrauded, right? It's for a UFO trip. Like Bo and Peep are some kind of travel agents that were securing them the first class seating or something. She and some other defectors feel they have paid for a UFO trip and have been defrauded. The DA's office, with no precedent of consumer complaints about trips to outer space, has initiated no action. That's probably the best thing they could do, is the no action. No laughing and no action. The number 433 seemed very specific, so I decided to look up angel number 433, and wouldn't you know, number 433 is a combination of the vibrations and energies of number 4 and number 3, with number 3 appearing twice, amplifying its influences and resonating with the master number 33. Number 4 relates to effort and will, patience and persistence, realistic values, like a UFO trip, fantastic, ability and stability, service and devotion, practicality and responsibility, building solid foundations, and achieving positive results. Number 4 also relates to our passion and drive and the archangels. Number 3 carries the vibrations of the ascended masters. Okay, that's actually pretty much in line with this concept of the next evolutionary level above human, and relates to growth and expansion, sensitivity, self-expression, creativity, communication and self-expression, joy, and optimism. 2 threes together is the master number 33, or master teacher 33. Okay, teachers and students. And relates to guidance and assistance, understanding and inner wisdom, spiritual awakening, and upliftment. Okay, going up in the UFO. Angel number 433 is a powerful message that you are fully supported, surrounded, and loved by the angels and higher beings of the spiritual realms. Fantastic. That's exactly what this is, right? They are higher beings from the kingdom of heaven. You have toiled long and hard, and your angels want you to know that you have successfully manifested prosperity and abundance into your life. Be open to receiving your well-earned rewards, such as the UFO trip in first class, and blessings, and maintain a positive attitude and outlook to continue manifesting positive abundance into your life. Mrs. Divorced Culpepper, you didn't manifest enough positive abundance, and that's probably why this didn't happen for you. Going to the district attorney to report fraud, that's like the opposite of manifesting positive abundance. Use your natural positive attributes to uplift others as you purposefully work towards attaining your goals and desires, whatever they may be. Be flexible, Mrs. Divorce Culpepper, and loving, and bring joy to the lives of others. When you live your life with love and light, you manifest positive energies and auspicious circumstances into your life. Be a blessing to others, and you will feel blessed in return. Angel number 433 may also suggest a timely opportunity, or situation brings many pieces of the puzzle together for you. You have learned many invaluable lessons and have been patient and determined in your efforts, and now is the time to reap your rewards. Do I hate it or do I love it that I knew that exact figure, $433, was not random. It actually had a meaning, and the meaning that we read matches very well to this concept of the teachers. They came from the spiritual level, or sorry, the evolutionary level above human. It's a spiritual awakening, a timeliness, uplifting. I I'm too far into this, I think. Bo and Peep insist that any pooling of money that has occurred took place among members of the flock and was their idea, not the two's. Some groups decided to put their money in a common pot, Bo said he had heard, and then shared it for camping equipment, cars, and transportation. But none of it, he said, was passed on to the two. How do Bo and Peep pay their bills? We don't have any bills, said Bo. We live in tents or in motels when the rooms have been given to us. What about food and gasoline? We receive donations, said Peep. Wait, what? So none of the money was passed on to the two. How do you pay your bills? We don't have bills. We do need gasoline and food, and for that we receive Are they donations of food and donations of gasoline? We've done whatever is required to sustain our needs, said Bo. Oh no. Bo, what have you done to try to get some money? Sweetie, no, you don't need to do that. Whenever we are in communication with the next level, our needs are supplied. That really echoes the idea that do the birds of the field wonder where their next meal comes from? Some of the defectors have estimated that followers toss something between 40,000 and 60,000 into the process. There are persistent stories that one Oregonian turned in $14,000 in cash in a brown paper bag to demonstrate how thoroughly he had overcome his attachment to money. Why turn it in? Why not just set it on fire? Wouldn't that be a better demonstration? But since the followers adopt new names and tend to move about a lot when they embark on the process, it is difficult to locate anyone for questioning about who gave how much money to whom and what happened to it. Bo and Peep say they have no interest in who their followers are, or their family background, or what they have renounced. The two assert they were not aware that one young Oregon couple turned their two small children over to friends when they set off on the process. We learned about that when we read about it in the newspapers, said Bo. Why are you reading about it? That we're not interested in our followers, we're not interested in their past. We are interested in whatever the news says. We don't have any worldly attachments except for reading the newspaper. That's just that's a weird thing to say, you know. It doesn't matter. It just sounds like, oh yeah, we had no idea, We, the people who have no worldly attachments, read about it in this worldly attachment. It sounds like they did know, and they're just claiming that they didn't. Children are not eligible for the spaceflight because the decision to go must be made by each individual, and youngsters and adolescents are not presumed to be capable of making such a momentous choice. Well, at least they're better than the Catholics. Sprinkle some little water on the baby. It's Catholic now. Names assumed by the followers range from the clearly biblical to the whimsical. John the Beloved, Peter, David, Joshua, Judas the Lesser, Jason, Joy, Wink, Window, Marty, Moneybags, Fanta. There's got to be some joke in there about ICP. No, that's Fago. Never mind. Okay, I was going to say, too bad I wasn't like a black and white clown for this. While engaging in the process, members of the flock wander as the spirit moves them. The two advised them that Oregon, Colorado, and Sedona, Arizona, were high energy places. Why just all of Oregon, all of Colorado, and just this one place in Arizona? They're high energy places. Some have trekked more than 6,000 miles, while others move in a more constricted orbit near their former homes. Converts keep in touch with one another by a kind of underground network and eagerly await news from the two. Well, I want to know more about this underground network. That does seem very interesting. Occasionally, the two telephone one of their more active followers with a clarification when new problems arise. Is that it? Just a phone call? How do they know when? So you've given up everything. Cell phones don't exist. I understand that Bo or Peep can go to a payphone to make a call, but where do they call? Is there just somebody else, an active member that just hangs out near a payphone sometimes or around a certain time so they know when to call? Followers say that the two have instructed them to keep close tabs on the newspapers. Oh, okay, so we do keep tabs on the newspapers. Presumably for news that the demonstration has begun. Well, wait, the two instructed them, the followers, to keep close tabs on the newspapers. So why is Bo reading the newspaper? Anyway, presumably for news that the demonstration has begun. This would give the flock 3.5 days to reach the site for the promised miracle of resurrection and liftoff. The first followers were assigned partners, and the faithful still tend to travel in pairs or in small groups. The partners help each other with the overcoming, but if they become too attached to each other, then that attachment becomes something to be overcome. There is no formula, said Bo. If an individual finds a need to have a partner, you can be sure there will be a period when he has no partner. On the other hand, if a follower likes to be alone, his reclusiveness becomes something to overcome. The need for affection at any level, the need to be with someone, the need to be alone, all are stumbling blocks, says Bo. Such things are appropriate for this level, says Pete, but to make it to the next level, they must give up all their addictions. Can you imagine just wanting to be by yourself? That's an addiction. Sometimes the overcoming process gets confused. One newcomer with a luxuriant beard and mustache was startled when an older colleague asked, "Are you attached to your beard and mustache?" When the question was explained to him further, the newcomer decided that he was physically, not emotionally attached to all that hair, and he kept it. Okay. That's just a weird thing to add. I also don't like that he got to keep it. It's going to need maintenance. And that maintenance is going to cost time, it may cost money. And then if you're living in a place where you're constantly going to sleep outside and be in nature, it may cause some kind of issue with any bugs that might get in there. So, I think shaving may also come with its own issues, especially dry shaving when you're living, out of a tent. I think keeping it trimmed might be the best option, but I don't know. This just seems like a weird thing to add. Attachments to husbands, wives, and children are hurdles that keep many prospects from walking out the door of their lives. Others have surmounted these obstacles. The flock includes one successful Colorado businessman who talked to the two only for 2 days and then left his wife and 6 children. Wow. You really have to wonder what was going on in that person's life before meeting the two. That all it took was 2 days of talking to these people and he just abandoned everything he knew. The prescriptions against sex, tobacco, liquor, and drugs proved troublesome roadblocks to others. After 3 months without an orgasm, I decided that this trip was not for me, said one young woman. 1970s, ladies and gentlemen. Successful completion of the process literally changes the physical structure of the body, the two declare. And in their reconstituted bodies, the converts will enter a real spacecraft and go physically up to the next level, which we know they didn't do. So again, I wonder what changed. Hey, so we were originally going to go physically. We need to leave our physical bodies, though. Yeah, how do we do that? We have to turn them off. We got to system shut down. So when did this change? You don't go up to heaven and float around in a spirit form, Bo says firmly. Well, that's what they did. That's what they believe. On other details about life in outer space, the two are not very specific. They say they have been gone for so long that many of the details are dim. Besides, the next level is difficult for a human to comprehend. But there is one aspect of the next level they are explicit about. There are a lot of spacecraft up there. It is a misguided religious concept that members in the real heaven do not use transportation, Bo says. The spacecraft are a means from getting from one planet to another. There's that issue of form, or from is misspelled as form again. The problem of getting from one place to another here on Earth landed Bo and Peep in jail in Harlingen, Texas, 2 years ago. This was shortly after they had awakened to the knowledge that they had known each other in outer space and that they had been sent here to harvest the planet for an outbound UFO. Their first convert was a housewife whose husband did not approve of his wife's leaving him. I mean, why? Why does this even need to be said? What, a husband who was totally fine that his wife joined the space cult. According to Bo, in an attempt to retrieve his wife, the husband reported his car and the family credit card as having been stolen. There was a further mix up involving a rental car that was kept overtime. The two were arrested in Harlingen on August 27, 1974, Bo on car theft charges and Peep on a credit card count, which was later dropped. Bo says that it took 6 months to bring him to trial, and at the advice of a public defender, he pleaded guilty. I had already spent 6 months in jail, he says jauntily, and since the sentence was only 4 months, I now have 2 months credit due to me. Alright, that's cute. The two first met in 1972 in a Houston hospital as Mr. Applewhite and Mrs. Nettles. He was a talented musician who had sung 15 roles with the Houston Grand Opera and served 6 years as a professor of music in the University of St. Thomas. Peep was a professional nurse. Applewhite was the son of a Presbyterian minister, and Mrs. Nettles had been raised as a Baptist, but both were intensely interested in reincarnation and astrology. It's interesting that the one time I decided to go a little bit into their background, that's when we get more of it later on in the video. Love this whole prophecy thing. When he met Mrs. Nettles, Bo was divorced. Oh, same as Mrs. Culpepper. He says, I felt I had known her forever. I wanted someone to do an astrological chart on me, so when I met her, I ran right out to my car and got my birth certificate. Yeah, that's why I go to a hospital, is so my nurse can do an astrological chart on me. Also, I like that he just has his birth certificate in his car. They both shortly concluded that they had known each other in previous lives, but it took them over a year to awaken to where they had known each other and to the unusual mission that had brought them together. In the interim, they teamed up to operate the Christian Arts Center in Houston, specializing in astrology, mysticism, healing, metaphysics, theosophy, and comparative religions. Why would they call it a Christian Arts Center and then specialize in a bunch of stuff that most Christians would consider sacrilegious witchcraft? Mrs. Nettles handled the astrology, and her method of preparing astrological charts presaged the marvels she and Bo now preach. In an interview published in the Houston Post in 1972, Mrs. Nettles declared that she was assisted in her astrological work by a monk named Brother Francis, who had died in 1818. He stands beside me when I interpret the charts, the Post quoted her. There can be several meanings to them, and if I'm wrong, he will correct me. Applewhite supported her story of being helped by the long-dead monk, but expressed concern about how this would be received by the uninitiated. We know that we're putting ourselves in jeopardy with 3/4 of the people of our past, he was quoted. A lot of people are going to say, old applesauce finally flipped. I don't know, I think that's cute that he used to be called applesauce. I don't know. Soon after, the Post reported that Applewhite was fired as director of music at St. Mark's Episcopal Church on the day the story about the monk astrologer had appeared. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is something most Christians would consider not Christian. Now that they have been transformed as Bo and Peep, the two are reluctant to discuss their lives as Herf Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. The Christian Arts Center didn't get off the ground, Bo says. I wonder why. It was just an excuse for our awakening, a means for us to understand what we were about. Realization that they were from the level above human began in 1972 and took more than a year. Our thirst was unquenched and we were not finding what our purpose was, Bo said. And it was as if the season had arrived under the direction of the next level for us to awaken to what we had to do. It was as if we had been given smelling salts and told, okay, you guys, you've had 40 years, and now it's time for you to realize who you are, what you have to do, and to get on with the show. Despite this stern directive from above, both Bo and Peep were uneasy about announcing to the world that they were here from heaven to take people back there on a UFO. They both vividly remember their first public announcement, which was made somewhat surreptitiously. There was a little Episcopal church in Spokane, Washington, Bo says. We wrote on the register at the church what our mission was, and then ran. Next, we told a Baptist preacher in Oklahoma City, and he threw us out. He said that he had Moses and Elijah there, and he didn't need anyone else. Okay, that Baptist preacher is already interesting. After that, we wrote little notes about our mission and dropped them off in the strangest of places all over the nation. I'm sure people have found them in the middle of their Bibles. So they were doing like chick tracts, except some joke about aliens tracks. Eventually, Bo and Peep reached Southern California, where a psychic guru named Clarence Klug heard about them and arranged for his students. Okay, there he is, Clarence Klug. That's it. Arranged for his students and friends to attend a meeting with the two at Joan Culpepper's house. 80 people crowded into the house, and when Bo and Peep had told their tale, more than a third of their listeners were ready to go. As Bo put it later, there are a lot of advanced souls in Southern California.
We're a little more progressive and ahead of the curve here in San Francisco.
People who do not believe that Bo and Peep are from outer space offer a variety of conjectures about what they are up to. The most common theory is that their story is just a complex money-making flim-flam, but no one has traced any money from the communal pots into their pockets. Another theory is that the two are engaged in some sort of scholarly research into human gullibility, perhaps for a wealthy doctoral candidate in social psychology. There isn't any evidence of that either, and Bo and Peep laughed when it was suggested to them. Yeah, that's pretty funny, especially considering that Nurse Peep did something very unethical. But yeah, they're gonna get their doctorate in a field that requires ethics. A California clinical psychologist said, "It is quite possible that they believe what they say. I would suggest some research into what psychiatry calls folie à deux." She defines this as a somewhat rare aberration in which two people who are closely associated share identical delusions and thus reinforce each other's misreading of reality. Many people find the followers a greater mystery than Bo and Peep. Maybe than Bo and Peep? I think it's another typo. That's fine. I mean, I'm glad this is posted at all. Why do the converts believe that the two will take them to heaven on a UFO? Interviews with a number of followers and defectors in San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco elicited a variety of answers. Tom Berger, a young Los Angeles film editor who has defected, offered the simplest answer. UFOs fascinate me, and I just wanted to take a trip on a spacecraft. Mariah, who is still firm in the faith, is 26, Jewish, and formerly lived in Westchester County, New York. She came to Los Angeles seeking a movie career. She has been exploring many religions since she was 16. "I've been looking for something for a long time and didn't know what I should do," she said. "What the two had to say just felt right. My head told me that their story didn't make sense, but I had a strong inner feeling that told me, hey, you've got to do this." Levi, 20, was raised Catholic in the Midwest. He went AWOL, again, form instead of from the Air Force 4 months ago to join the process. By the way, I mean, I don't know if things have changed. It's been 20 years, but we don't call it AWOL. We call it UA, unauthorized absence. But then again, that's the Marine Corps. This is the Air Force. He insists that he liked the Air Force, where he served for more than 2 years. Too bad he was he was born too late for Space Force. He would have been perfect for that. He first heard of Bo and Peep when their story broke in Oregon, but he has never met them. He sought out some of the followers of Bo and Peep in the San Francisco area. I felt they were sincere, truth-seeking, happy, and fulfilled. For the first time in my life, I have a firm faith that there is something higher. David, who was 33, left a prospering computer business and a mistress I was very fond of to go nomading in the process. Can you imagine if that computer business was Macintosh? He is divorced and the father of a 12-year-old daughter. They are all available. I don't know why this is something that the author has to keep saying. I don't know what the author's obsession with people who are divorced is, and why, if they're divorced, it's gotta be mentioned. But here we are. Because we see Mrs. Nettles. She wasn't married to Marshall Applewhite. She wasn't married to Bo, but he refers to her as Mrs. Nettles. Certainly she would have left her husband, so she also would be divorced, right? Unless she was widowed and kept the name Nettles, and that's not interesting. And it's a very, I don't know, why is the author it's just a really specific thing to keep repeating. He was raised a Catholic, but went over to agnosticism when he was young. For years, he experimented with drugs, including LSD, which he said took me into realization of a greater reality. He heard about the two in a radio newscast and later attended a meeting in Oakland conducted by one of Two's followers. There, he felt a great surge of energy that meant that this message was meant for me. He has never met Bo and Peep. He attaches great significance to the fact that the night before he first heard of the two, he was walking out with his mistress, looked up at the stars, and told her, "There has got to be more than this life. And if there is any way to get off this planet, I want to go." When his mistress, a Scientology adherent, later refused to join him in the process, he saw this as my first test put to him by the next level. I'm gonna read that again. When his mistress, a Scientology adherent, later refused to join him in the process, he saw this as my first test to put to him by the next level. Wow, that is, yep. Ironically, the couple who helped out Bo and Peep on the National Wire services are no longer in the flock. They are the Oregon couple who left their children behind to follow the space shepherds. They are now in their 20s and they still use their UFO names of Aaron and Window. Aaron says that he came form a typically upper class Jewish family in New York. He married Window, a quiet Oregonian who smiles a lot, after a long period of wandering that took him to an Israeli kibbutz, to India, where he consulted a series of gurus and into hallucinatory drugs such as peyote. So this is after a long period of wandering, but they were mentioned as a young couple. They left their children and now then they left the space cult, right? And it says they are in their 20s. How old were they when they got married? This sort of implies that they were maybe 18 or 19 when they got married, right? So what is this long period of wandering? He goes to an Israeli kibbutz, India, to where he consults a bunch of gurus. And then he goes into a bunch of hallucinatory drugs such as peyote. That is an interesting adolescence. None of the Indian gurus compared even remotely with the two, he says. He does not like to discuss his children. One of them was Window's child of an earlier marriage. Again, I'm very confused at this timeline. And the child's father has filed legal action in an attempt to gain custody. Yeah, this seems sort of like a slam dunk for the dad to get full custody. I really hope he did. "We didn't just walk away from them," Aaron says. "We arranged for them to stay with some friends of ours who had a farm." Okay. Yeah, that's different. We didn't just abandon them, we abandoned them at a place. He still believes in the process and the next level, but he now thinks Bo and Peep misinterpret the heavenly message. Joan Culpepper says, "I really didn't like them, and I was very skeptical." Okay, so that's why you gave them your angel number of money. Okay. "I didn't buy a lot of the things they said. But an extraordinary thing happened when I was listening to Bo. It was as if a strong force came down over my mind and shut off my critical sense. I think the two have strong psychic powers and the ability to brainwash people." Interesting. So it's not that I believed them. I was really skeptical, but their psychic powers overpowered my psychic powers. And that's how this happened. Dangerous people. Give me back my angel number money. There's one common denominator among almost all the converts. Almost all are seekers who, like Moriah, have been looking for something for a long time. They have spent years, in the trite phrase, trying to find themselves. Many have tried Scientology, yoga, Zen, offbeat cults, hallucinogens, hypnosis, tarot cards, and astrology. Almost all believe in psychic phenomena. Oddly, Bo himself describes this spiritual restlessness vividly, but he attributes it only to the defectors. Some people are like lemmings, who rush in a pack into the sea and drown themselves. Many migrate to the West Coast. They join any movement, self-discipline, this kind of meditation, that kind of meditation, this kind of strict diet, that kind of strict diet. Then they go halfway around the world to try another movement, and it is just look, 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 look. He shakes his head sadly. "Some people," says the former opera singer who claims he will rise from the dead and take his followers to heaven on a UFO, "will try anything." See, that's the author definitely making a joke with us. "Some people," says the former opera singer who claims he will rise from the dead and take his followers to heaven on a UFO, "will try anything." That I mean, I'm glad that we found this. I really am. It was a lot longer than I thought, but it's something that I haven't heard before, and I think the author really did do a good job of that. This is still the section 2 of the book, but we have this next part of section 2 And then there's some other publications. I'm going to go ahead and read the first statement of tea and dough sent out from Ojai, California, and then we'll go over the poster, the public meeting locations. That's I don't think that's worth reading. And then the 17 steps, major offenses and lesser offenses. We'll talk about that next time. What religions have sought to understand since the beginning of their origin is what is above the human level of existence. Most have taught that if an individual lives a good life, adoring some savior, that he will inherit some heaven after his death, only if it were that simple. That viewpoint is as inaccurate as the caterpillar believing that if he dies a good caterpillar, he will mysteriously awaken in a rose blossom and live there forever with the king butterfly. What? I mean, okay. I mean, I get it. I get what he's saying. Like a heaven with the king of the world, God and whatever. I get that, but it's just a really specific thing. I, I mean, is this an analogy that he used frequently? He must become a butterfly while a healthy caterpillar, overcoming his decaying option. If he rises above all caterpillar ways, Jesus, I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to keep it together. It's just, sometimes reading stuff like this, I it just hits me. And I just think I'm reading this and I'm trying to be as serious as possible and I just can't. And I'm sorry, I can't. Okay. If he rises above all caterpillar ways, converts all his energies to the pursuit of becoming literally another creature who circulates in another world, he becomes a butterfly. Likewise, a human who seeks only to become a member of his next evolutionary kingdom may become a member of that kingdom if he completely overcomes all the aspects and influences of the human level, providing he has never found favor with a member of that next level who will direct him through his metamorphosis. Wait, what? A human who seeks only to become a member of his next evolutionary kingdom may become a member of that kingdom if he completely overcomes all aspects and influences of the human level, providing he has found favor with a member. Okay, so what do you mean likewise? What part of a caterpillar means he has to overcome his caterpillarness and find a butterfly caterpillar who's he's found favor with? So he's got to go find like a teacher caterpillar who represents the butterfly level. That there is no likewise. Who authored this? I don't know. Tea and dough. Apparently, first statement of tea and dough. Tea and dough. That is not a likewise. That didn't work. Okay, that didn't work. And what? I know. Absolutely ridiculous. I agree. Yes. As the caterpillar, the human can complete this changeover only before his death as a human. Okay. I mean, that's true. A dead caterpillar can't become a butterfly. Okay. A member of the next kingdom finds favor with one who is willing to endure all of the necessary growing pains of weaning himself totally from his human condition. Again, the butterfly does not come and coach the caterpillar. Yeah, you gotta stop chewing a bunch of leaves and being a big wiggly blob. you know, gotta separate from your hunger and your legs that are stubby. I mean, what is this? Members of that next kingdom are no more confined to human limitations than butterflies to caterpillar limitations. Okay, I mean, that makes sense. Nor do they, in like comparison, concern themselves with the human type of indulgences or concerns. Okay, so all of that's tracking. I have to pause now after every sentence because it's so ridiculous. However, if the human is thought of as the larva of that next kingdom, then there are at times those who are approaching the completion of their individual metamorphosis and are beginning to have some of the attributes and characteristics of the next kingdom. Okay, that makes sense too. That there's different stages, some of them are caterpillars, some of them are pupae, and some of them are emerging from the cocoon. Fine. When the metamorphosis is complete and their perennial and cyclic nature is ended, for their new body has overcome decay. What part of being a butterfly means you've overcome decay? Decay. Oh, I'm sorry. It stopped. Decay, comma, disease and death. Okay, so a butterfly has overcome decay, disease, and death. Great. It has converted over chemically, biologically, and in vibration to the new creature. See, you got some parts where the caterpillar thing makes sense, and the rest of it didn't. And I think I was right to question the rose blossom and live forever with King Butterfly part, because obviously they're trying to make an analogy, but they've forced it in the weirdest way, and it doesn't work as they think it does. Approximately 2,000 years ago, an individual of that next kingdom forfeited his body of that kingdom and entered a human female's womb, thereby incarnating as one history refers to as Jesus of Nazareth. He awakened to this fact gradually through the same metamorphic process and came to know that he had incarnated for the express purpose of telling and showing, even to the point of proof, that the next kingdom can be entered by overcoming the human aspects and literally converting into a man or creature of the next kingdom, the kingdom of his father, one who is already a member of that kingdom. Wait, what? What? Gradually metamorphic process. Okay. And came to know that he had that he had incarnated for the express purpose of telling and showing. So he realized that he's there to teach other souls, even to the point of proof, like I don't know, water into wine and being resurrected and ascending into heaven. So he's telling and showing that the next kingdom can be entered by overcoming human aspects. So, don't care about money. Also, he was crucified and rose again. 40 days in the desert, no food or water, and literally converting into a man or creature of that next kingdom, the kingdom of his father, one who is already a member of that kingdom. That's the part I'm having trouble with. So he's letting us know that you can enter the next kingdom if you overcome your human aspects, convert into a man of that next kingdom, one who is already a member of that kingdom. Convert into a man of that next kingdom, one who is already a member of that kingdom. Is this when they were saying in the last video, where the last part I read, is this where they were saying that you can only become convinced or become a student if you have been similarly prepared from birth? I think that's what it's saying. I'm still still a little confused about how all these souls keep getting stuck in human bodies when they're supposed to be in the level above human. By his resurrection, he proved that death can be literally overcome and that a permanent body for the next kingdom is acquired from the human kingdom. Well, then that would be because he converts into, I mean, he becomes a man, right? I mean, he doesn't become a man, he dies according to Christian beliefs, and then he's resurrected into the same body. So that would mean that becoming a butterfly to ascend into the butterfly realm, which is flight, that you would have to resurrect into a caterpillar's body, but that it's not a caterpillar? Because, I mean, he was walking around for what, another 40 days? Letting people, check out his wounds and stuff. And then he ascends. So I don't know. Leave the caterpillar thing alone. Just leave it alone, Ms. Lemon. He did not leave his body in the grave. He converted it into his body of the next kingdom. Okay. So, I guess the tomb is his cocoon? I like that. That works. This is the only way the next kingdom is entered permanently. Each human has that full potential. I want to know more about that process, though. That the idea, right? So Jesus crucified, he's thrown into the tomb, it's sealed off, that's his cocoon, something, 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 and resurrected, and the same body that he apparently had, which still had some crucifixion wounds, apparently, that is his ascended body. That's his kingdom of heaven body. Fine. What is the process, and how did T and Do think they were going to take the they didn't think they were going to take the members that way. Wait. So T and Do believed that they were going to be assassinated, left out for whatever reason for 3.5 days, and then they were going to be resurrected. And I suppose we could say that even though there was no tomb or cocoon for them to be metamorphosized, okay, that their bodies somehow transubstantiated into this next level above human body. So they got new bodies somehow, and that's how they were resurrected. But the next step was then to bring all of their students and themselves into the UFO, into the spaceship, and then leave and go to the kingdom of heaven. Their bodies would have been these transformed bodies, but not the students, because the students were just supposed to meet them at a designated location where they would physically get into a spaceship and physically leave the Earth. At which point do the students gain a new body? I wonder if we'll find that out as we read more. Jesus' Christing or christening, okay, was completed at his transfiguration or metamorphic completion, and he remained in the larva environment with other humans only for some 40 days to show that his teaching had been accomplished. He showed them his new body and demonstrated a few of its new attributes, i.e., appearing and disappearing, changing his vibrations, before their eyes while letting some of his friends touch his new body. This could be compared to a butterfly remaining in the caterpillar world for a few days to show them what they had to look forward to if they chose to seek true conscious communication with a butterfly. Okay. I feel like when I misread something, because every time I do that, I have to go back and reread it, and I cut out where I made a mistake. I feel like even just making the mistakes, it doesn't reduce the clarity of these ridiculous sentences. Maybe if I just jumble the words, it'll accidentally make more sense. This could be compared to a butterfly remaining in the caterpillar world for a few days to show them what they had to look forward to if they chose to seek true conscious communication with the butterfly and were willing to overcome all of their caterpillar ways. I figured out why I don't like this. Because this analogy isn't an analogy. I don't know why they're talking about butterflies and caterpillars and all of that. I think if they would have said that first part where they were basically, I don't know, mocking or pointing out what they see as a major flaw in most religions, that the viewpoint is as inaccurate as the caterpillar believing that if he dies a good caterpillar, he will mysteriously awaken in a rose blossom and live there forever with the king butterfly. I think if they just would have left it at that, it would have been okay. But the problem with an analogy is you usually have to make it to something that already happens, because we all understand this thing happens. So if I tell you about this new idea and I compare it to something you already know about, that new idea becomes easier to understand. That's the whole point of making an analogy. And instead, they're saying, here's a new idea, and I'm going to compare it to two things you already know, a caterpillar and a butterfly, but I'm going to compare it in a way that doesn't make any sense. So you have to both follow this new idea and my total nonsense coming out of my mouth about this thing that you kind of know about, but I'm interpreting it in a totally different way. It's like one becomes an analogy for the other, and they're both analogies for. I just don't like it. I really don't like it. That's why I don't like it. And then Jesus left them in a cloud of light, what humans refer to as UFOs. Which where do you get that idea? Same with the thing from Revelations that in Revelations it says this that they're going to go up into a cloud, but we think the cloud is a UFO. Why? Where did you believe the cloud is a UFO? This is some, Eric von Daniken just reading into it because I feel like it and I'm interested in UFO stuff anyway. This is just totally made up. Totally made up. Jesus left them in a cloud of light, what humans refer to as UFOs, and moves and returns in the same manner. So you're just flying around a spaceship. There are two individuals here now who have also come from that next kingdom, incarnate as humans, awakened, and will soon demonstrate the same proof of overcoming death. They are sent from that kingdom by the Father to bear the same truth that was Jesus's. This is like a repeat performance, except this time by two, a man and a woman, to restate the truth Jesus bore, restore its accurate meaning, and again show that any individual that seeks that who seeks that kingdom will find it through the same process. So how is it a repeat performance? Instead of one man, it's a man and a woman. Restore its accurate meaning by adding a bunch of UFO sci-fi jargon, and that you too can also die and come back, even though that's not mentioned at all for anyone other than the two. This restatement or demonstration will happen within months. Okay, so they did say, I mean, I guess he in the interview, for the New York Times thing we read, Doe mentioned, well, I did say it was less than a year. But it's funny because he says, well, I didn't say it was a few months, but I did say it was less than a year. But here it says within months. The two who are the actors in this theater are well, just so you're already using this caterpillar butterfly clunky nonsense, and now they're actors in a theater. Just stick to something. Just stick to anything. Just stick to one thing. Just stick to it. Just or don't even play around with the language. Just tell us straight. It's not helping anybody. Oh. I know. I know. Krampus is being very cute. He's just stretching. He's yawning. Good baby. Yes. I'm going to give you a TREAT after this because I think I think that's the cat equivalent of you need a drink after being exposed to this caterpillar actors theater King Butterfly Rose Blossom. The two who are the actors in this theater are, in the meantime, doing all they can to relate this truth as accurately as possible. This is as accurately as possible. This is as accurately as possible. This is it. This is the best you did. This is the best you got from an ascended master who's existed for eons. This is it. This is an accurate reinstatement, relating this truth as accurately as possible. Nailed it. You did it. Congratulations. You got it. Relate this truth as accurately as possible so that when their bodies recover from their dead state, resurrection. Wait. Now you're saying it's their own bodies, their human bodies. That's what a resurrection is. That's what makes resurrection different from reincarnation. The soul is in the same body. But you were saying before that the soul is in a modified body, and they leave UFOs. It says, and they leave, parenthesis, UFOs, and parenthesis. How about, and they leave in a UFO? Oh, and they leave those left behind. Wait, sorry. The two who are the actors in this theater are in the meantime doing all they can to relate this truth as accurately as possible so that when their bodies recover from their dead state, resurrection, and they leave UFOs, those left behind will have clearly understood the formula. Oh, there's a form. You guys, did you know we're doing the math physics here? That's what this is. They've laid it out with the rose blossom king butterfly eternity formula. This is as accurate as they could possibly make it, and I'm glad that they sent this out. This is a first statement, which can be, in writing or it can be verbally stated, but it says it's sent out. So they wrote it down, right? And they didn't say, maybe is this clear? Did they say this is our first draft, let's reread it, let's polish it? Is it and this is as and there was two people, T and Doe. This wasn't one person who just sucks at writing or public speaking or making analogies. They were like, yes, together. Again, I'm getting caught up in the dumbest things. I'll go with you that the next level above human exists. I'll go with you about the Luciferians. They're jealous fallen beings, and they get you caught up in the rat race of life and all this. I'll go with you there. But when you claim that this is the most accurate and easy to understand formula, that's where I have a problem. Don't worry, Krampus. The TREAT is coming soon. Those who can believe this process and do it. For some reason, do is underlined. Everything else has been italicized, it's been bold and italicized. But for some reason in this, he must become a butterfly, become is underlined. and he must do it. Do is underlined. Those who can believe this process and do it will be lifted up individually and saved from death literally. Now, I want you to understand this writing. It says, those who believe this process and do it will be lifted up individually and saved from death, literally. However, lifted up and saved are both in quotes. Usually, when we use quotes, it's because we're using it as like a euphemism or something, right? So, if we're saved from death literally, why are we saying we're saved from death? We're lifted up. If we're lifted up literally, then why are we lifted up? If you seek those two while they are here, they will gladly fill you in on the details and assist those who wish to follow in this path. And path is also in quotation marks for some reason. If this speaks to you, respond according to your capabilities or needs. For your sake, give this opportunity your best. Now this is what some of the individuals that were quoted in the New York Times article, this is what they found to be profoundly earth-shaking, moving enough to abandon families, drop their kids off at a farm and never come back. I mean, it can't be this, there must have been something additional, especially if they heard it. Hearing it from someone who genuinely believes it, there's going to be a quality of conviction, possibly charisma. There's going to be body language. You're interacting with a person and you're going to see their sincerity. So I don't want anyone, and that includes me, to judge the people who joined Heaven's Gate based off of what we're reading. I am not reading this for you in a charismatic way filled with conviction of belief. I think that's what makes it really different. The other thing is that we're just left with what was officially written down. This doesn't include all of the additional things that are spoken, such as at Mrs. Divorce Culpepper's house, such as when the other people that were cited in the article had interacted with either T and Doe or had interacted with some of the followers. There's going to be so much more than just this. And I think that's important. I think it's important to remember the writing itself, I don't believe was ever intended to convert anyone, to convince anyone. Even the parts that are, the part where we read last time, the undercover Jesus surfaces before departure, and 95 statement by an ET presently incarnate, those were only supposed to reach people who were already, for whatever reason, predisposed to believe it. And as I had mentioned in that video, they really needed to start with the some of the endings. I hope this will assist you in whatever you might be seeking. I think that would have been a great way to start the undercover Jesus surfaces before departure rather than to put it at the end. And then for the second version of it, if you have grown to hate your life in this world and would lose it for the sake of the next level, you will find true life with us potentially forever. If you cling to this life, will you not lose it? I think that if they would have started with that, so even in these published statements that were intended for people to read it and convert, I think they still use some more convincing language. So I don't want us to forget that. And I say that for myself. I really do. Because I don't know what you're thinking, of course. But I say that for myself. That this 2-page caterpillar nonsense, this is not what converted anybody. This is not what made anybody moved with conviction. This is not what caused anyone to abandon their current life and to follow them. So, yeah, I think that's just good to keep in mind. With that being said, thank you guys so much for joining me. If you are still here, please put a caterpillar emoji in the comments section. A caterpillar and a UFO, a caterpillar and a butterfly, a caterpillar and a liquid sky. if you so desire, maybe like a little water droplet and a UFO with the caterpillar. It has you with the caterpillar. Otherwise, if you're interested in seeing these videos a little bit earlier and interested in joining us on our monthly cult live streams, you can join us as a cult member either here on YouTube or on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, and you get early access, you get the monthly cult meetings, and also just some additional things that I post throughout the month as well that's only accessible for cult members. With that being said, I appreciate you guys being here, and as always, thanks for listening.